I'm Robert Evans, Sony Artisan of Imagery. In this video, you will learn about arranging the wedding day photography timeline. Something that I like to do at my weddings is become the second shooter. So I have to have someone who I really trust to cover the main action while I go off and look for the intimate details. About 30 minutes before the ceremony is going to start, I put myself at the side of my bride and I just hang out with her, whether she's in the room with her girls, sitting with her father or her parents, and I basically just observe and watch, and I shoot those moments leading up to her walking down the aisle. And within that 30 minutes, and especially within the last 5-10 minutes before she walks down the aisle, there's some really great emotional moments. There's laughter, there's crying, you can actually visually see the butterflies on the face. Those are times where you're really going to catch real, true emotion at a wedding. A lot of times people are thinking about the main action, such as the bride walking down the aisle, but the real raw emotion, the true moments are happening a lot of times behind the scenes. So that's why I'm in the back of the aisle with the bride and her parents. And so I'm not the one that's in the front of the church shooting the bride coming down the aisle. I have to trust that to my second shooter. When I'm in the back of the church, generally my lens of choice would be the G Master 24-70. This lens gives me the most versatility. It's a 2.8 lens. I'm generally shooting probably on an ISO about 800 because a lot of times I have door light coming in because the doors to the outside of the church are open, or maybe the side doors are open so I have light streaming in from both sides. It's perfect for what I need at this point. The ceremony's begun, everybody's walking down the aisle. The bride leaves and walks down the aisle. Because I'm behind her, I'm going to shoot that shot of her from behind. It's always an interesting shot, especially if there's a balcony. As soon as I get that last moment and she and her dad leave, I will literally bolt up a set of stairs and try to get up above her. This is the point where I'm going to shoot some wide overall shots of the ceremony. They're basically scene setters that I will use in an album so that I can have a nice 2-page spread, let's see, so you can see, here's the ceremony, this is where it took place. And now I'm going to move in and I'm going to focus in on a little bit closer. So I'll come downstairs, I'll switch to a 70-200, I'll walk up the aisle on either side, and my assistant's on one side and I'm on the other. And now we'll photograph expressions of the bride and groom. I shoot her, he shoots him. We'll also look at the guests and the people in the front rows, which generally are the parents, the grandparents, the kids, the bridal party, catching crying and laughing and those type of things. The ceremony isn't just happening in front of you, it's happening all around you. And I think it's really important to capture guests' expressions as well as what's going on during the ceremony. One of the great features with Sony is the silent shutter. You can actually put the camera on silent, and when I say silent, you can't hear it. One of the first times I used it, I didn't even realize I was taking pictures. I was like, is it working? Because it's silent. You're pushing a button. You don't hear the click of the camera. So the awesome thing about this, especially during a ceremony, is maybe you can sneak into those places where you're not supposed to be. Sometimes I've wanted to shoot through a doorway that's sort of off to the side, and she's like, oh, well, you can't go back there because they don't want to hear the camera. So I'll actually show the church lady, like, listen, here's my shutter. I'll take a picture of her and I'll take it. She didn't hear it. And I say, can I go back there now? And she's like, well, yeah, if you're not making a sound. I'm also making sure that I cover all the important religious aspects of that wedding, whether it be the ring exchange, the vows. Depends on the type of religion that you're shooting. There's all sorts of traditions that it's super important to know what those are so that you actually capture those during the ceremony. But once all that is complete and the recessional and the kiss are starting to get close, I'll switch back to a 24-70 or maybe my 35. I'll put a flash on the camera, especially if I'm in a church. My second shooters usually come in the back. One of us still has a long lens and we can shoot the kiss and get it from that angle. So I'll usually walk up the aisle about halfway, kneel down so that I'm not in the way. They pop up. I catch a kiss shot, so one of us is shooting natural light, one of us is shooting flash, and the couple now starts to walk down the aisle. I'm backing up with them, taking photographs of their expressions, flash. I'm probably limited here with flash to 9 or 10 images because I can't shoot very fast because I have to let the flash recycle. If I'm outside, then this is a whole different scenario. If I'm outside and I have some pretty daylight for a ceremony, I'll put a 35 on the camera. I'll generally use my A6300. I'll put it on high frame rate, and I will walk down the aisle. I'll back up with my couple, and I'll just let that thing rip. I choose the 6300 to do this in an outdoor situation because of the high frame rate. And the autofocus system with contrast and phase detection, it doesn't miss a thing. It focuses. I don't have to worry about focus. I can just back up and shoot. And with a wide lens, not only am I catching the expression of the bride and groom, but I am catching the people watching all around me, and I want to include that in my shot. You're going to get so many more usable frames this way because I might shoot 30 to 40 images backing down the aisle. So when I go back and cull and look through my edit, I might have 10 or 15 images that are amazing as opposed to 4 or 5 backing down an aisle with flash. Another way I educate my clients, especially about the ceremony, is that everybody at a wedding today has a cell phone. I used to see just a bunch of smiles and elated and happy faces and expression, which really add to the overall impact of an image. But today, all I see is this. Now people have been putting signs out, having the priest make an announcement so that we don't have that and we go back to the way it was where I see smiling faces, not phones. The first images people see on social media are going to be the ones that they remember. So it should be the best images from the photographer that they've hired. So I work with my brides to make sure I pick 5, 10, 15 images and get those files to her right away so that she has something to put out on social media. And they'll ask their guests to not post images from the wedding before the bride does. Because honestly, once you've seen images from Lisa's wedding for 2 weeks, and then the photographer gives her the images 2, 3 weeks later, nobody cares anymore. So if we're outside at a barn or at a beach, or one of the things where the couple can literally kiss and say I do and keep walking down the aisle and keep going for a little walk, I will grab my camera and a 70-200 and I'll follow them from a distance. And I'll take images of just sort of that moment right after the ceremony, that they're excited, they're happy, it's over with. They're telling stories about the wedding. I see it all the time. And after 5, 10 minutes or so, whenever they feel like they're done, and the lights changed at this point, I might have some beautiful backlight or a great sunset, I'll take 5 or 10 more minutes to do a few more portraits with them right after the ceremony. I don't want this process to take more than 10 or 15 minutes because the idea of them seeing each other before is to go be with their guests. Getting the pictures done before and having the time during cocktail hour to shoot detail and decor is a huge benefit. Because if not, usually you have about 1 or 2 minutes to try to get all the room shots and everything done. And as you know, room shots are important not only to the couple, but you can use them for marketing and getting them to the vendors to make them happy so you can get referrals in the future. One of the things that I like to do during cocktail hour is I put the 70-200 back on my camera and I walk around and I shoot candid headshots. So I basically single out individual people and I try to catch them smiling, laughing. They don't know that I'm taking pictures. And honestly, I've gotten some of the best feedback from couples about this. They're like, oh my gosh, you caught my aunt, she looks so great. You caught my friend, they look so natural. Because they are being natural, they don't know that I'm taking their photograph. And it's a great way to just walk around and catch a different type of cocktail images. I try to get about 15 or 20 really good ones. And really the secret to making this work is to keep moving, because sometimes you'll fixate on one person and you're trying to get them, but you're not going to get the shot. So just keep walking, keep moving, set a goal, shoot 10, 15, 20, and once you do, you're done. Moving on to the reception. All the guests have filed into the room and people are starting to sit and the band's playing. One of the first things that we're probably going to do is a grand entrance. The bride and groom are going to come in and do a first dance. There will be some toasts. Here are great opportunities to use other features in the camera. Again, silent shutter comes into play here. Many times during a toast, you don't want a loud, obnoxious camera going off, so silent shutter works really well here. We try to split it up, myself and my other photographer, and one of us shoots expression of the bride and groom, and one of us shoots the person talking. And basically, once you get a good picture, I just get off the dance floor so I'm not obtrusive. But I do something very interesting now, which I couldn't have done 5 years ago. Pretty much at all my receptions now, I shoot only available light. And it's because of cameras like the A7S II and the A7R II that allows me to do that. So I shoot available light, I use my fast lenses, I'll use my 85, I'll use my 70-200, my 24-70, and my second photographer will shoot flash. So I'm covering it both ways, but it gives the client a completely different look. And also by shooting in available light, which sometimes is lost in flash photography, is I'm really giving the feeling of what the room looks like with all the beautiful uplights and lighting on the centerpieces. So I'm capturing images as the eye sees it in the room. It's so amazing to me because a few years ago, I would have never believed that I could do this at a wedding, or cameras with these super sensitive high ISOs and great quality images would ever exist. Shooting a wedding, and especially a reception, with the ability to shoot it as I see it and high ISOs and fast lenses has really changed the way I photograph a reception. I'll give you a great example of how we do this. Let's say during cake cutting. A lot of times at the weddings I shoot, they have beautiful light, the cake's lit really well. So why not shoot it available light? I have plenty of light, so I will shoot it available light, and then I'll let my second photographer shoot it with flash. I generally, during cake cutting, don't control what happens. I give the bride and groom a few quick directions: put your arm around each other, hold the knife with your outside hands, and cut it, feed each other, and have a great time. I really trust my other photographers, and even during dancing or the things that go on, it really allows me to sort of push the envelope and think of different things that I can do to play, if you will. I really play photography at my weddings, and I try to find different ways. I'm thinking about building albums and shots going to that, so I might put the camera on the floor on a lit dance floor. I can go up high, I can shoot a wide overall shot of the room during a first dance, and my other photographer can be down there on the floor to get the close-up shots. But it gives me the ability to capture images that otherwise, if you're trying to be the main photographer, you're not going to get, because you don't have the freedom to roam and to see those things. I feel it's really super important, especially new photographers, old photographers, however long you've been doing it, and especially at a reception, is as much as you can is to be everywhere, but to be nowhere. And what I mean by being nowhere is just being invisible to the client. You're there to capture what happens, but you don't want to be front and center. You don't want to be controlling everything. You don't want to be the director that they notice that you're directing. You just sort of want to be like a ninja and flowing in and out of a situation, capturing moments and moving on, but allowing people to have a good time and not stopping the flow of the party. I always feel as the photographer, it's my responsibility to make sure that I capture the toasts and the first dance and the father-daughter and all those things. So there is a point in the night where you're going to want to go eat and you leave the room. And generally, we always trade off. Leave one of your photographers in the room while the other one eats, because it's your responsibility to get those things. And I've heard stories before where the planner told me I could go eat, but then something happened because the band made an announcement. A good piece of advice is, while one's eating, the other person stays in the room, and then you switch. That way you're for sure not to miss anything. In this video, you learned about arranging the wedding day photography timeline,